Okay, so today we have Susma here with us. She's just finishing up her first year here in the Regent PsyD program. And so first of all, thank you for joining us today, Susma.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, for having me here.
And kind of maybe we can start with just tell us about a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so my name is Susma Khanal. I was born in Nepal. I came here at the age of 9. So that was in 5th grade, and I'm currently 23 years old. And like Daniel just said, I am finishing up my first year this very week.
This very week.
This very week.
How does it feel?
It feels kind of surreal because it's been like a long journey and it feels like it's been forever, but at the end, like the reward has been beautiful. So
Okay. Yeah, I'm just this week finishing up my second year, and I can remember that first year. We'll get into it, but it's very heavily laden with academics,
yes.
whereas your second year is more about seeing actual clients. So you're going into that here soon, and that's kind of like the most rewarding. That's what you're here for, type of thing.
Exactly.
But with the first year, can you kind of? I remember looking into programs. I didn't know if I should do a master's degree, a PsyD, or a PhD. Can you kind of tell us what your thinking was in looking at the PsyD program?
Yes, so before I even applied, I didn't even know that there was such thing as PsyD, to be very honest.
Okay.
I had heard of PhD and a lot of different master programs, but when I went to my professor from college, she recommended that I look into PsyD program, which is a lot less about research and more about clinical work. And I am not a big fan of like doing research and stuff, so I thought, wow, this is like a perfect opportunity. But then at the same time, I was like, will I get accepted? Because obviously as we all know, that like doctoral programs are hard to get accepted in. But then I did apply. I applied to 11 schools, half of it being masters and then half of it PsyD, and I think 2 PhD programs.
Okay.
And then I got in like a lot of PsyD schools, so I was like, okay. So that's how it all began.
So that's hopeful. If you think about, you were thinking, can I even get into a PsyD program? And then you reached out to 11 and like half accepted you, and then you dwindled it down to picking Regent.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's good to know.
Exactly.
And can you maybe talk about the difference, why one might choose PsyD over like a master's?
Yeah, so this is not like I don't have data to back me up right now, but this is totally my opinion. But from what I've heard, again, PsyD is a lot less research. So PsyD is more of like hands-on experience. You get to work with clients from the very beginning, whereas PhD programs might be more research. And of course, as we all know, PsyD is like a lot less in years. So PsyD, for example, for Regent, it's only 5 years, whereas a PhD program might be 6-7 years. It might take longer. So for me, that was kind of like the bonus, where I was like, okay, a lot less years and more hands-on, and that's what I like. I like to talk to people. I like to interact with like clients and stuff. So I saw that opportunity, and I was like, let's do it.
Okay. And choosing a PsyD over a master's, is that just because PsyD is a higher level, or what was your thinking there?
So for me, I was like, okay, so psychology is not a field where we're going to make a lot of money. And when we do masters, I feel like masters is not enough to really like work with clients on a different level. And I saw that opportunity in PsyD or in PhD. So I looked at it and I was like, okay, so the PsyD program has the master's incorporated in it. So why do master's and then apply for doctoral program again? Why not just go straight to the doctoral program and you're done in 5 years? Whereas if you did master's, then you have to come for the doctoral program again, and you waste about 7 years of your life versus 5.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you chose Regent, and we all know Regent's kind of they advertise themselves as a Christian school. Their slogan is Christian leadership to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
The other schools that you applied to, are they also Christian, or why? What kind of went into your thinking on why Regent?
So, fun fact, I'm actually not Christian, I'm Hindu.
Okay.
So I feel like in all of my classes, I'm the one person who's not Christian, and I think that was like the major question that I got asked by a lot of people. Is like, why did you choose a Christian school? Well, because I attended a Catholic school when I was in Nepal, when I was little, and I really liked it. And my brother actually works at the naval shipyard here in Norfolk. And I was like, I'm going to save money. And I saw that opportunity. But the other schools that I applied to, no, they were not all Christians. I applied to, I think, Divine Mercy University, which I believe is Christian as well. But yeah, it just all worked out at the end because I could live with my brother and save money and cost-wise.
Yeah, so you're already in the area.
Yes.
Oh, got it. Interesting.
Yes.
What do you think about with Regent, they do a lot of Christian integration. A lot of our classes begin with the devotion. We have specific classes that are, what is the class you just got done taking in the summer? The
Survey of Christianity.
Yeah, Survey of Christianity. So it's this whole semester of just a whole bunch of information on Christianity from its origins to now. So what do you think of all the Christianity classes?
Yes, it's actually been a very interesting experience for me because not only do I get to see things from my own worldview, I also get to learn about a whole different worldview. So I feel like that has been a bonus for me, whereas my peers are just educated on their worldview. I now am educated on two worldviews, so I feel like that will help me in the long run with my clients in the future because I can take both Hindu clients, both Christian clients, and hopefully, hopefully I will become educated in Muslim clients too. Yeah, but it's definitely been interesting, Danielle. Just hearing about the similarities and differences and seeing how these two religions connect. And more than differences, I tend to see similarities in things, and that has been a beautiful journey for me.
Oh, good. That was well played.
Thank you.
So outside of the Catholicism that you were introduced to at a young age, you said you came over here when you were 9?
9 years old.
Had you been exposed much to Christianity from then till now?
So I went to a high school which was very, very diverse. So we had Muslim population, we had Hindu population, we had Christian population, and a lot of different denominations of Christianity. So I feel like, again, I've got that benefit of being exposed to a lot of diverse groups, but not just Christianity, but again, like a lot of different diverse groups. So I'm very thankful for that because I feel like, although I don't know in detail about different religions, I feel like I have the broader idea.
Yeah.
So that has helped me a lot.
Yeah, good. I remember I hadn't had a whole lot of introduction to the Muslim faith, and I traveled to Bali once.
Oh, you did?
And my driver there was Muslim, and he invited us over to like this dinner, and he was talking about kind of how they don't eat pork, right?
Pork, yes.
Yeah, and he was but meeting with him, that was also around the time that kind of 9/11 and all of that, and a lot of Americans were very discriminatory toward Muslims. And then I meet this guy, and I'm like, this guy's awesome. Like he would never do something like that. And so I think what you're saying is being exposed to all these different people and having firsthand experiences is gonna help you a long ways in terms of clinical psychology.
Yes.
So so you choose Regent. Can you kind of tell us about what it was like for your first semester? What kind of classes did you take? What was it?
So I remember it was Monday, and it was like the first day of class, and I sat in IQ class, intelligence testing, and right from the very beginning, we were exposed to a lot of new information, which we did not think about before, and in all honesty, it was it was a lot. Like, I had this idea about psychology, which was not meeting with the with the live experience that I was having that day. But I think it's easy to just think about psychology as like an easy field, whereas like that is not the actual reality of it. There's a lot that goes into it, and I feel like psychologists don't get that respect that they deserve. And just the first semester, I mean, the things that I learned, the knowledge that I've gained, the skills that I've gained, I mean, it's immense. And yeah, it's definitely a lot of work. It's definitely not easy. You just really have to like put yourself out there and just learn. But again, like I feel like at the end it's all very rewarding, despite all the hard work that we have to go through.
Yeah, I remember. So, do you remember the amount of hours they tell you that they recommend don't working past if you do work? What is it like 15 hours or something?
Yeah, I think 10 or 15.
10 or 15. So they recommend that we don't have a job outside of, especially the first year, outside of coursework. And if we do, limiting it to 10 or 15 hours because of the sheer amount of information we are forced to process in that first year of academia.
Yes.
Yeah, and like you said with IQ, coming into this program, I was completely unaware that psychologists also did any type of testing, or especially intelligence testing. I didn't know that was something that we did, or yeah, and so the assessment classes, so you'll talk a little bit more about personality in a minute, but those classes I feel are the most difficult, challenging, most amount of information.
Exactly.
But also the most rewarding,
yes,
I think. So with IQ testing, can you maybe talk a little bit more about that class or what that entails?
Yes. So it's a lot of hands-on work. You have to, like you personally know, you have to know how to say things, what to say, and in what pace to say. So the instructions that you give the client, it has to be done very, what is that word?
Standardized.
Exactly. So there's no messing around, there's no like pausing. You have to do everything in very lenient way, and I think that's very difficult for a lot of people because everyone has their own way of doing things, but then you come into this class and now you are all expected to do the same thing. So again, that's very challenging to do, and it kind of puts you outside of the box that you have been used to. So for me, it was like getting out of my comfort zone, and it's like, okay, hey, I need to do this. I need to like say this thing at the right amount of time, and then there's this amount of space in between, and I cannot take more amount of time than I'm required to. So again, it's a lot, but you eventually get good at it, which is kind of surprising. Like time really does improve your skills.
Yeah, and I think I would say from what you're saying, I resonate more with how you felt about it. So I don't like a lot of structure, and I like to just bring my own thinking or my own personality into the moment. But there are the other camp where they love rules. They're like, just give me a rule to follow, and I want to know exactly what to do, what to say. And so that type of people might really gravitate toward testing.
Yes.
There's a lot of professors in our field, like, there's a lot of professors in our field that they're all about testing, and that's what they love to do because it's so structured. And, yeah, so maybe the testing classes will be a little bit more difficult to adjust to for people who are more kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it more difficult because we're not just taking that one class. We're taking other classes as well with that class. So it's not like you can give all of your time to that one class. You have to also navigate through the other classes that you have, and you are expected to have good grades, and you're expected to maintain your scholarship. So really like finding a way to navigate through those different classes and still maintain a good grade makes everything more difficult
Yeah.
because you can't just focus on one thing. So just like managing time and then trying to cram up everything into 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Uh-huh. Yeah, real quick before we get to that, I will say that although we both kind of came into this not knowing that testing was a part of the program, it is specifically the one thing that a clinical psychologist doctoral level is able to do and administer that most people with a master's or they are not they're not able to they're not licensed to practice administrations and testing. So that is like the one thing that sets us apart on a higher level.
Yes.
And so you mentioned taking other classes at the same time. What other classes in your first semester?
So I took clinical psychology, I took clinical interviewing, I took psychopathology. For me, clinical interviewing was like the most fun.
Okay.
Like I love to talk. And that was one place where I could kind of like talk to my friends. We would do role plays because of COVID, of course. We didn't really get to have real clients. I don't know if you guys did.
No, well, actually, yeah. So in clinical interviewing, at the very end, they have in this program what they call probes, right? And well, go ahead. Will you explain what a probe is?
Yes. So a probe is basically a testing that is required. I don't know, like if it's a national requirement or just a region requirement, but it is something that even if you have an A in a class and even if you're excelling, if you do not pass this probe, you get one more chance to retake it. And if you do not pass it the second time, then you basically fail the class and you have to repeat it again. So it does not matter if you're like, again, excelling in your class. You have to pass the probe.
Everyone dreads the probe.
Exactly. So on top of your classes, you have not only your class exams, but you have probes.
Yeah, so for our probes, pre-COVID, we had real volunteers from the campus or community, and they came in and we had 3 separate sessions, 45 minutes each, and we had to act out certain what they call interventions, like there's like open questioning, restatements, all that stuff, and it's basically the clinical interviewing class is a class where they give you your fundamentals of how to speak with clients in a professional manner.
And what to say, what answers to give, or how to like reply, what to reply. So I think that class was fun for me. I also enjoyed psychopathology.
Oh yeah.
Because you're kind of like diagnosing somebody. You're reading their case study and you're trying to figure out what this person might be having or what they're dealing with and what diagnosis you can give them. And clinical psychology was I actually took clinical psychology in college.
Okay.
But it was fun. It was just a class that did not have a lot of other things besides papers.
Yeah.
So
what did you get your bachelor's in?
So I actually went in for biology.
Oh, okay.
And then in my 3rd year, I ended up switching to psychology.
Oh, wow. Well,
I don't know if that was a smart choice, but
what made the switch?
Okay, so I'm Asian.
Okay.
And there's this expectation in Asian society and in Asian culture where parents really want you to become a medical doctor. So getting a PhD or a PsyD, I feel like, is not enough. So my dad really wanted me to become a doctor, but I was never interested in biology. But for some reason, I was always interested in psychology. I took one psychology class in my first semester of college, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
So at the end, I was like, I can't do something I do not love. So I eventually made that switch.
Well, that must have been hard.
Yes, it was hard because you have to like cram up all of these things. But then I did graduate on time. But then that made me take like a 1-year gap because I hadn't applied anywhere. Yeah.
And your parents, were they supportive of the transition?
Um, yes,
Yeah.
to some degree.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I do not blame them. I think it's a big decision, and
Yeah.
I mean now they're fine with it. But initially, I do not know if like they were very into it. So
even so, I come from a very fundamentalist Christian background, and when I was getting my bachelor's in psychology, my parents were they said, we think you should just instead study something like theology or go to a seminary or something like that. And so yeah, I resonate with the kind of to some extent, and then not yeah, but they're completely on board now
Yes.
too, and so
Yeah.
it's interesting.
It takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the clinical interviewing class, that's how we said it's laying down the fundamentals of how you engage with clients and maybe challenge them in certain areas, or you really practice your listening and
listening skills.
Yeah, learning. I remember you learn to maybe they say something in the first 45 seconds, and you hold that in your mind, and then you like log it away, and you maybe 20 minutes later you go back to that, and you kind of develop that skill of holding all of this different stuff in your head without taking notes. And the very first exercise they had us do, remember, like the 7 minutes of just listening and restating what.
Yes.
Were you nervous for that?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, it's like
exactly.
a 7-minute exercise, and all you're doing is one task.
Exactly.
But I remember how nervous I felt doing that. And then, how was it for you with the 45-minute for the probe with your? You guys did it with your classmates?
No, we actually had real clients,
Okay.
but it was done via Zoom,
Uh-huh.
and I enjoyed it. Like I love to talk again.
Yeah.
So I'm good at that. I actually volunteered in a suicide prevention hotline for 2.5 years.
Oh wow.
So for me, clinical interviewing was like, okay, I've learned all of these skills. Now let me put it to use in this class. So I feel like I truly did excel in that class.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was just I brought up to my supervisor. So in this program, we learn a lot about how to do therapy, but we learn, I would say, to my knowledge, little about crisis intervention. Or, if they put us into a suicide hotline, call center or something, I don't think that our skills would really transfer too well. And I think there's a big difference there. And I was talking to her, it would be cool to have an elective or just some extra training on that area.
Yes.
So that's really neat that you bring that to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, we do tend to focus on a lot more things, but like you, I also wish there was more information on what to do if we encounter clients that are suicidal, and not just clients, but even in our personal lives, like what to do if a friend calls you and says, hey, I'm feeling this way, like what is the step to take from there on, and having that additional practice would definitely make things a lot more better.
Yeah, that's what brought it up for me, is that we had a friend give us a call, and it wasn't that they were actively suicidal in the moment, but they were in a very kind of dark place. And after the phone call, I was thinking, like, did I do okay? Did I use anything that I've learned so far? And then that's when I realized we haven't really learned a whole lot about the type of intervention.
Yes.
And then you talked a little bit about psychopathology class. I just remember basically we had to memorize the DSM in that
DSM,
class.
exactly, your Bible.
Yeah, the
right?
Bible. Yeah.
It's basically your scripture that you have to memorize. And I think the probe is kind of challenging for that class because they give you the case study and you have a certain amount of time. I don't remember how. I think 2 hours. But you're basically diagnosing the person, and yeah, so.
Yeah, I forgot about that probe.
Yeah.
It was they give you this whole case study with like a background history and they're presenting concerns or problems, and then you have to go through and figure out what the diagnose them with,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And then so you completed your first semester, um, and then what classes did you take the second semester?
So second semester, I took psychotherapies. I
Okay.
took personality assessment.
Okay.
I took what else did I take? It's so hard.
Yeah.
I took statistics.
Oh.
And then I took. Why is it this easy to forget?
You blocked it out?
Yeah. I will get back to you on that. But yeah, I took 5 classes.
Wow.
How do I not remember?
We got statistics, psychotherapies,
personality assessment.
personality.
I'm losing it.
I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah. Multicultural.
Oh,
Multicultural.
Yes.
And then one more class. But I'll get back to you on that.
Fine.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite class out of those ones?
I enjoyed multicultural
Okay.
because I enjoy anything that has diversity in it. I also enjoyed psychotherapies.
Okay.
Statistics was fine. I'm not too much of a math science person.
Yeah.
So it was fine. I think the hardest class for me definitely was personality assessment. Again,
Okay.
not a surprise, but
Another assessment class.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember learning that we had to take a statistics class, and I did terrible. And when I was going through my bachelor's, that was the class I did the worst in. But here in this program for statistics, we got to use a program. What is it?
SPSS.
SPSS, and that made things so. When in my bachelor's, we hand calculated everything with the calculators. But then so this program you just punch it into Excel, or not Excel, but into the program SPSS, and other than it just made things so much easier.
Yes, exactly.
I don't even have to understand why it works. You just learn the steps.
Exactly.
Right?
It's kind of like learning a new software, or like editing, or like whatever it is. Just learning how to click the right buttons.
Exactly, in the right order.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think Dr. Ripley, she likened it unto baking a cake. Baking a cake, just following the recipe. Yeah.
Exactly. And she also provided us with like this Word document which had all the steps in it, so even like the pictures, like what to click, where to click, so I think that made it a lot more easier. So I'm kind of thankful for that, because again, I'm not a math person, but having like the visual images helped me.
Yeah. And then psychotherapies.
Yes.
That is where you actually start to learn like different models of therapy and how to use them, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so that class was very interesting because you learn about the different like DBT, ACT, and one more model.
CBT.
CBT, yes. So what you can use with your clients in the future, which model can work with which clients, and vice versa. So I think that class was just taking in a lot of information and finding what makes each model unique from one another.
Can you talk a little bit about those 3 different models and what they are? Put your information to use.
He's putting me on the spot.
At least a general overview. Like
yes.
some listeners might not know what DBT is, or
yes. Can you help me with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so DBT, ACT, and CBT. So who do we use DBT with again?
So DBT stands for dialectical behavioral therapy, and that therapy is a lot of stabilizing.
Yes.
It's for maybe clients who are not completely emotionally stable. It's a lot of coping skills.
Yes.
They have even as simple as having a client hold an ice cube for a while.
I remember that.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
Which was bizarre to me. I would have never thought of that. Or using like a red marker and coloring your wrist instead of cutting, if that can So that's more about stabilizations,
Mhm.
and then
ACT.
ACT, or what they say ACT for that one. It's the only one that you don't spell out like the other ones. I don't know why. But that is acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yes.
And what did you?
So you learn to kind of accept things as the way they are, and then at the same time you learn to like how to cope with it, I think. Where you like recognize that it's there, but then how it how you won't let it like take up all of your energy, or how to kind of like put it in the side but not really hone on it. So.
And that comes a lot from Eastern philosophy of, I can't remember the quote, but he said, "Don't push the river; it flows by itself." And that's kind of where that therapy comes from.
Yes.
And then for CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy.
So for that, I remember we used like, there's so many different worksheets for it, and you can give different worksheet for a different client. You can kind of like talk to your client about what worksheet might work for them. I think it's a lot about coping again. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's largely about symptom reduction.
Yes.
And so it's like coping, getting the client behaviorally activated. A lot of times people, do you know the cycle with depression?
Yes.
So a lot of times people, they are depressed, and so then they don't want to do anything, but then they don't want to do anything, and that makes them depressed, and it's just a cycle.
Yes.
So with the behavioral activation, you try and get your clients to do anything and everything that is pleasant or enjoyable. Maybe they don't even enjoy it now, but something that they used to enjoy. If you can kind of get them activated while you're working through cognitions or their thoughts. So
I kind of look at it like breaking the cycle. I don't know if you agree with me, but it's kind of like a person is going on this cycle, but like how to come out of it, and how to like take the right steps to like eventually kind of recover from that. So that's how I look at CBT.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not just so within CBT, the cycle that they kind of focus on, I think, is their theory derives from the cognitive theory, which postulates that your thoughts, if you have negative thoughts, that leads to negative emotions, and then that leads to negative behavior, and then that reinforces the negative thoughts.
Exactly.
And so that cycle, and it's about breaking that cycle.
Yes, you put that really well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What did you think about that class?
Yeah, it was very interesting, because again I got to learn about these different models, and what works with what client. Isn't DBT usually with like schizophrenia and
so like borderline clients.
Borderline. Yes. So just seeing what model might work with, again, what clients, and I think having that freedom in the future to choose one of the models with clients, or even having like the endless amount of worksheets, for example, in CBT. So you kind of don't have to follow a pattern. You can kind of like choose your own way as a clinician, and choose what might work best with your client, and even giving the client the freedom of choosing what might work with them. So I think it comes with a lot of freedom. So I enjoy that.
Good. And then multicultural. What was that class? So you mentioned a lot about how you like the diversity training, and can you kind of talk about that?
Yes. So in that class, we talked about things such as social justice and discrimination in America, racism, and how to take clients from different backgrounds. And we also, at the end of class, I remember we would break into groups and kind of vent. Kind of vent about like what we thought, or like what we don't like about what's happening in the world, or like the readings that we did. And so having that platform to like talk about your feelings, it helped a lot. And just having a lot of people in the room be together and listen to conversations that a lot of people might find uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So kind of exploring that area, I feel like it's always interesting because
Yeah.
people might get exposed to something that they're not familiar with, or even learn new information. And like the past year, social justice has been a major thing in America, so I think it was like a very correct time for us to be in that class and learn what we did.
Oh, good. Yeah. Did you guys, I remember also pre-COVID, we had to, part of that class, we had to choose somewhere out in the community that wasn't a part of our own cultural, I guess, belief. And it's like, it was called a submersive experience or something. And I went to a Buddhist temple.
That's awesome.
And took like a meditation class. Did you guys, I know you weren't with COVID, but did they just drop that for you guys, or?
No, we actually did that, and
Oh.
yes, I interviewed a Christian.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm like always around Christians, but then
Easy
I'm
to
like,
find.
hey, I'm different,
Yeah.
so I can still interview you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had the opportunity to learn about one denomination of Christianity, and I think the most shocking thing for me was like I didn't know before coming to this program that there were that many different like denominations of Christianity.
Yeah.
And so when even in one class, some claim to be from one denomination and some claim to be from the other, and I'm just like, wow, like I didn't know. I thought like Christians were just Christians, you know. So yes, I got to interview an evangelical Christian, and yeah, so they had more like conservative thoughts and beliefs compared to maybe other Christian denominations. So I think it's very interesting to hear about like different beliefs.
Yeah. And part of what you'll do second year through I think fourth year is you have case presentations and you talk about confidentially. You talk about one of your clients and they're presenting concerns and how you're conceptualizing their case, and part of that entails you speaking to diversity factors. And one of the only things that can be similar yet different is religion, because like you said, Christianity is on such a spectrum.
It is.
And it ranges from people who say, oh, I'm Christian because my parents are Christian, but they don't really have any type of solid maybe I guess belief in Christ. And then it ranges to the completely legalistic, fundamental, literal Christian. And so that's a wide spectrum. And if you as a Christian, if you have a client who's a Christian and you just think, oh, well, we're both Christians, so we're going to understand each other and where we're coming from, that's not how it always plays out. So
yes. Yeah, and I've seen the differences even in my cohort from one Christian to another, like just hearing about the differences and the different views that they have on different topics on our present world it's very interesting, because again, prior to coming to Regent, I didn't know that the differences within Christianity were so prevalent. So
with Hinduism, it's all just, if you meet a fellow, it's just
exactly, we all kind of share the same beliefs, and I think it's the same with Muslims as well. They all kind of have the same, or maybe it varies, but I don't want to like say something that I'm not aware of. But I think they're very like strict about their beliefs in terms of like, I think they all follow the same. I don't know. Okay, I don't want to talk about it because I'm not aware of it. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So and then we talked about statistics, psychotherapies, multiculturalism. And then here we go again. I feel like there's one more that we did remember.
Yes, I don't know. I lost it, Daniel. Yeah, but it must have been an easy class, because how can I forget? Yeah.
We named 4 earlier,
yes.
remember?
4.
Well, remember.
Yeah, it'll come. It'll come. But why don't we talk about, I think, like
Oh,
coping
personality
or
assessment. That's what it
personality
was.
assessment. Ooh, okay.
That's why it's.
Yeah.
Look.
So personality assessment. What do you want to know?
Yeah. So, um, before I joined the program too, I also didn't know that we, again, with assessments, I was completely unaware. And when I heard about a personality class,
Mm.
I thought we were going to be giving kind of like, have you heard of the 16 personalities?
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, you can take online or the Enneagram, something like that.
Exactly. I wish.
Yeah. So what are these personality tests
Uh,
like?
it's where do I begin? It's a hard class
Oh.
with, I think, again, you get case studies kind of similar to like psychopathology, but now it's not just like diagnosing them. It's like you go deep down and you just like research and you find out what scales are elevated versus the other, and you have to really like know what you're talking about. You have to group the scales together.
So can you what scales are you talking about?
So there's a lot. There's a lot of scales. Like, do you want me to name them? Like, there's scales such as like RC scales, ARX, I think.
And this is part of it's part of the MMPI,
MMPI,
which is
3.
The Minnesota Multiphasic
Phasic
Personality
Inventory. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of scales, and they're basically entailing what a person might be going through. So one scale might talk about like their one scale might be depression related versus the other scale might be anxiety related.
Okay.
So if let's say scales that are related to depression are elevated, then what does that say about the client? Versus if the scales which are talking about anxiety are elevated, what is that entailing? So I feel like it gives you a deeper look into the client, whereas psychopathology was just kind of like, okay, yeah, let's diagnose them, it's done. This is like, okay, what scales are elevated? Are they depressed? Do they have anxiety? Do they have like mood problems? Do they have this? Do they have that? So it really, again, really like lets you see what the person is going through on a very deep level.
Yeah, and the personality tests, they're more focused on symptomatology or just, I don't want to say negative, but on symptoms versus, so they're going to tell you this is what the client's going through in a negative way instead of like these are the strengths of the client.
Yes.
Most of the ones that we learn in that first class, right?
Yes.
And so yeah, so that class, like you said, with psychopathology, you have this case study with no information about testing, and so you can learn to make a diagnosis based on what your client is telling you. And then this class gives you an extra tool on if we give these certain tests to the client, we have data. So again, with those people who love structure and rules, and they're like, well, now I have this data to back me up, and I can make this diagnosis, and when asked why, I can point to the numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's basically what that class is like. It's also very difficult.
Very detail-oriented.
Detail-oriented.
Very structured.
Not a strong suit of mine.
Exactly. Yeah, it really requires a lot of time, a lot of energy, and that's hard to do when you're taking 4 other classes and when it's all crammed up in 4 months. So for me, actually, personality assessment was harder than IQ testing, because IQ testing, I feel like it gets better as time goes by. Like, you kind of get that practice, whereas personality assessment, you really need to know what you are doing. And not just for the probe, but even in class, like, we'll have final exams. I mean, it's unlimited time, but then it's very specific questions, and so
yeah, and they don't just talk about the MMPI, they also talk about the MCMI, which is
the
Millen multi-axle
something.
Yeah, I can't remember right
Yeah.
now. But so they talk about that test, and then you have to learn that one.
And you have to learn to integrate it together.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, so you can give someone multiple personality tests, and then you have to write reports and
Exactly.
to explain what the test shows you. So you take the MMPI and then the MCMI, and you integrate them
Together.
together and
And
write
then
this report that's coherent and not contradictory in any way. And
no.
yeah,
And
so that class you could spend a full semester just learning the MMPI, but it's like no, you're gonna learn the MMPI and the MCMI and a few other tests just to kind of
yeah.
throw those in there.
Exactly. There are
Yeah.
more tests. You're not just learning the MMPI and MCMI.
Uh-huh.
You are learning Rorschach.
Mm.
You're learning, what else did we learn?
Was it the TAT?
TAT.
Yeah. Like some projective tests.
Yes, so you're learning about a lot of different things, and then you have this probe at the end, which you're also supposed to prepare for, and you only have 3 hours to write about 6 to 9 pages, and you have to know what you're talking about. You have to integrate it. You have to be really good at it, and on top of it, and also worry about all of the exams that you have crammed up in the final week of the program. So yeah.
That was by far the most difficult class, I think, in my own opinion, too.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because I think first semester we just come in and we don't know what we're getting ourselves into, and it's hard. But then second semester you think it's going to be easier, and then it's like, no, here you go, and then one more class added, and then just do good in all of your classes, pass the probe, and so it's definitely difficult.
Yeah. So you started to bring up coping earlier. What were you gonna say?
So yeah, coping. Let's talk about coping.
Okay.
How does coping look like for you? Let's start with you.
How do I not get
Like
overwhelmed
coping. Yes, exactly.
with the amount of work that we have to do? So I would say that my first step was I was halfway through my second year, and then my wife came to me with the idea that we transitioned to a 6-year program, and I had never thought about it before. I didn't know what that might look like. So I talked to my faculty advisor about it, and asked about the pros and cons of that. And so, from my understanding, the way that she kind of explained it was she thought it would be a good option, especially with I'm not a very type A personality. I'm not let's just work and have no time.
Life.
Have no life.
Exactly.
And I also when I started this program, I wanted to be intentional and devote this time to learning about psychology and becoming the best that I could possibly be in that small amount of time of school. But I found myself neglecting a lot of the readings. We have so much required reading to do.
Much.
So I found myself neglecting that and not having a whole lot of. I love to read in my own personal time, whether it's about psychology or philosophy or religion. But I wasn't able to read as often as I would like to have been. So anyway, I brought up the idea to her, and she said it would, by the time I apply for internship, it would give me more clinical experience, more hours, which would be a good thing. It would give me, it would take the amount of work that I have to do in 5 years and lengthen that out to 6 years, which would give me more time in between. Maybe I'm taking 3 classes per semester instead of 4 or 5. And so I really like that idea.
Yes.
The only drawback that I could see with that was that it's another year that you're here in Virginia Beach, which isn't that bad of a place. But it's another year that you're not working out in the community making money, that you are also paying for school. So that was the biggest, kind of the financial part of it was the biggest con, I thought. Which I was glad. I was like, I'll gladly accept that if it means I can have a little bit of breathing room.
Yes.
And so I think that was my first major step. And then what I try to focus on is just quality time with my wife, and then reading today's Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
but last night I went to the beach and I just read on the
Hey.
beach. And so I love the ocean. I love being on sand and
Mm-hmm.
near the water. So that's kind of I guess, what makes me think of go-to coping
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to coping with this program. What have you found helpful?
So after the first semester, my hair was falling so
Oh
much,
no.
and I went home and I feel like my mom was like, Susma, what happened to
Uh,
you? Like, you don't seem like yourself
uh,
anymore because of all the stress.
yeah.
And I feel like I just spent the break just stressing out for no reason.
Mm,
And I saw it kind of affecting my life.
mm,
I did not like who I was becoming,
mm,
and like you, I also like to like have a life outside of school.
yeah.
I'm very social. I want to have fun. I want to make friends.
Yeah.
I want to go out and do things that are fun to
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
And so I thought like second semester was going to be better, but that
Uh-huh.
was not the case.
Mm.
And in second semester, I gained so many pounds
Uh,
just in one semester
mm,
because of all the stress, and I saw myself changing physically, and I did not like that at
mm,
all. Um, so now I think, now that like I have this 1.5 months break, I really need to figure out what it is that I want to do
mm,
to cope with the stress, because I do not have that answer yet.
uh-huh.
I want to work on myself. I want to get a membership in the gym and still continue that
Uh-huh.
after I join school again, and still make time for like my passion. And yeah, like coping really does look different in different people,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I have found what
Mm,
works for me
okay.
yet.
That's rough.
Yeah, but yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be incorporated
Yeah.
into everyone's life who is taking
Yeah.
this program.
Yeah.
So
They
yeah.
they preach a lot here about self-care and then don't give you much time to do
No.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it does, like you said, it looks very different from person to person.
Mhm.
Um, and then you have to be very, I think, in a way, disciplined, because I think what you see a lot of is trying to escape,
Mhm.
and which might look like either for some people, it might look like just being on YouTube or Instagram and just trying to get away from your thoughts.
Exactly.
But that there's a difference between escape and self-care.
Mhm.
And for some people, that might be self-care, but
Mhm.
when it comes to a point of when you're using it to just, yeah, to escape,
Yes.
that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think like for you,
uh-huh.
it's easier for, well, I can't speak for you, but I think you just got married
Yeah.
in December.
Yeah.
So having a wife at home to go to and
Mm.
just like share the stress with, and
Uh-huh.
she's also in the program, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So for you to have that support system,
Yeah.
I feel like that's helpful. I
Yeah.
don't know what you think, but
Yeah.
what would you say?
Um, I would say that that's kind of a
Sorry
low
for putting
question.
you on spot.
You're good. I would say that it is very, very beneficial to my well-being,
Mhm.
and it is very nice because she is, like you said, she's also going through the program, so we can talk about what was stressful. We can talk, and she resonates with it,
Mhm.
and she can bounce back. Um, with that, there is also a lot of, we got married in December, which is like, so that means we were planning the wedding. On top, I was also a teacher's assistant at the time,
Yes.
and so I was taking classes, seeing clients, assisting teaching classes, and planning a wedding.
How do you do that?
So that's why I said it's a loaded question, because it did add a lot of stress,
Mm.
and but also I think, yeah, having someone else that is always there for you is a very
Mhm.
monumental way of dealing with the stress and coping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you understand each other,
Yeah.
and you can go out and have fun.
Yeah.
Whereas I go home to my brother and he comes back from work and he's kind of like, don't disturb me. Like
Uh,
he doesn't, he's not sociable like me,
Uh-huh.
and he just kind of likes to be on his own, like watch his shows and kind of hang out with his friends. And to me, he's like, "You're just my sister, like go away." So I'm kind of going home, and I don't have like people to interact with, and even like with friends, they're busy doing their homework or whatever. So
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't find that time to go out and have fun with people.
Okay.
And I want to like have that in my life, but at the same time, like not everybody has the time to do so.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, I need to work on that. Like yeah.
Yeah. I remember, so I didn't get married until the second year in the program, and my whole first year I was living with this wonderful older lady. Like, she's in her 60s. I met her on Craigslist. It's a long story, but I was living with her at the time, and my cousin from Ohio. She's we grew up together, and we I was off living in other countries for a while, and we always wrote to each other and stayed in contact. And when I moved back to America in order to go to grad school, she mentioned she was going to go to Regent University, and that was, so this is the only school that I applied to.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so I told her, I was like, I was looking into grad schools and I found Regent. So she moved out here about a year prior to myself, and so my first year, she was very good about letting me just meet up with her at times, and I would just complain to her, and she actually was my volunteer for the IQ test.
Oh wow.
So yeah, she's been great. So she was a very I don't want to say resourceful. That sounds kind of like, but she was very also helpful in helping me cope with the whole stress of a first year PsyD program.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you had that.
Yeah, so I would say, I think that you're spot on with, if you're going to go through something like this, it's important to have a community. It's important to have people that you can meet up with and will let you rant for 5 or 10 minutes about how difficult your class was, or a probe that's coming up.
Yes.
I think that's very important for us to have going through a program like this.
Yeah, so one thing that I always like think about is like, we're in a field where we're going to be helping other people, but what do you do when you are the person that needs help? Because again, it's a lot of stress, and you need to go through coping, and you need that social support system. So I think to anyone who wants to do a program like this, I think it's important to build relationships, and again, like Daniel just said, like have people that you can go to and rant, because you will have a lot of those moments where you just want to rant, you know. So yeah.
And something that they tell us is that every therapist has a therapist, and there's many reasons to that, but I think that that's a good piece of advice. And here we can go to the counseling center here and get free counseling, or if you're a Regent student and you're not part of the PsyD program, you can come to the Psychological Services Center and get free therapy. So.
And even outside, I think you can get discount and everything.
Yeah, very good discounts.
So there are resources if we would need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for the talk, and this is my first chance that I've really got to sit down and talk with you. I've enjoyed hearing your experience, and if you do need a friend, you can always reach out to me or my wife. Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel. And am I like your first?
You're my first.
Wow.
Yep.
So I just want to congratulate you for doing this,
Thank
and
you.
I see you like going big in the future, and I wish you all the best, and don't stop, keep doing what you love to do, and you are a very good what do you call, like podcaster or like interviewer, so you are very good job, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Susma.
You're welcome.